Okay. In case you did not, we have one more person coming in, but I can make this announcement as Michael Dwyer is joining us. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The Jeffreys Point Neighborhood Association Planning and Zoning meeting for the month of May 2022. This recording is publicly available on our website at www.jeffreyspoint.org. You are not required to be on the recording, either visually or verbally. You are welcome to submit questions through the chat. You are welcome to keep your camera off and even change your name as it is displayed if you wish to do so. You will not be penalized or held or otherwise treated differently. My name is Margaret, and I am the co-chair of the Jeffreys Point Neighborhood Association, and I thank you for joining us this evening. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Huang. I am the vice chair. Andrew?
I'm Andrew Pike. I am the treasurer.
I'm Mary Cole. I am the secretary. I'll be taking notes.
Okay. And Susan has an announcement about an event we have coming up.
Yeah, so the JPNA is hosting a neighborhood cleanup this Saturday, May 21st from 9 to 11 a.m. We will be meeting at Brophy Park and all supplies will be provided. The weather in the morning is looking great for Saturday, so we hope to see you there.
Absolutely. And thank you to Susan, who has organized and put this event together. As our vice chair, she is responsible for our events and assisting with, assisting everybody else, and she is doing an excellent job, and we thank her for her efforts. As I mentioned earlier, we only have one item on our agenda, but we do wish to be respectful of the fact that all of you joined us this evening. This is the second presentation for 62 Haynes Street. The proposal is to renovate an existing structure and change the occupancy of the building from 3-family to a 4-family unit. This would include roof decks for units 3 and 4. The developer is Lightning Realty LLC, and it is represented this evening by attorney Richard Lins. Who I saw here. Yes, I do see that he is here this evening and he's turning on his camera. And we'll let you take it away, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, I am Richard Lins, an attorney here in East Boston with a business address of 245 Sumner Street, right in the neighborhood. This is a second presentation, as Margaret indicated, for 62 Haynes Street. We did make an initial presentation at a prior planning and zoning subcommittee. We were asked to consider some modifications and to show that update to the group, which we have here tonight. My client is actually Francesco Kirigati Spoldi. I believe he may be on the call, but we also have Chris Drew with 686 Architects, who is our project architect. So I can run through the presentation and then obviously answer any questions or comments at the end. If we could jump to the next slide, please. So as Margaret indicated, we are proposing to change the occupancy of this pre-existing 3-family dwelling. It is a conforming use because 3-family dwellings are allowed in this particular district. It is a non-conforming structure for a number of reasons, including the dimensional conditions that exist presently for the site, as well as how the building sits on the site. The project would involve the complete rehabilitation of the existing structure. We would reprogram all of the existing space, but we aren't increasing the building's footprint or the gross floor area or the height of the building at all. As I'll show you in the plans, the existing conditions right now for the 3 units contain a total of 8 bedrooms. Our proposal, although we are changing the occupancy to 4 units, would actually reduce the total number of bedrooms from 8 to 6. Because the extent of the renovations that we're proposing would exceed a certain threshold in the state building code, we're also going to upgrade the life safety of the building. That means we're going to fully sprinkle this building as well as update the fire alarm system that exists. We are renovating the rooftop structure as well. There's an existing head house. We're actually removing that. We are proposing to add roof decks on the upper level. Upon completion, this would be intended for home ownership. So these would be individual condominium units for sale. Next slide, please. So we can see here the BPDA abstract. This is taken from the city's website. It does show the zoning subdistrict, as I mentioned previously, is a 3F 2000, which allows 3-family as a matter of right. This is also in the groundwater conservation overlay district, as well as the interim planning overlay district. We do see coastal flood resiliency overlay district as one of the zoning overlays that are applicable here. However, based on the size of our project, we're not required to comply with any of the coastal flood resiliency guidelines or regulations. Next slide, please. Bird's eye view, you can see the building, its proximity to Pierce Park and Marginal Street, as well as the turn at Haynes. Next slide, please. Just a view of the existing conditions and the context in the immediate surrounding area. Next slide, please. And then looking back towards the harbor. Next slide, please. And then our street view as viewed from Haynes. There will be some upgrades that are proposed for the exterior of the building as well. And I'll show you that when we get to the rendering. Next slide, please. Want to include this view so you can see the existing head house that's on the building currently. Our proposal, as I said, will eliminate that head house. I know an original proposal that we presented at the prior Planning and Zoning Subcommittee showed 2 head houses, one for each roof deck. We've eliminated those in the current plan, and we'll show that in a moment when we get to the elevations. Next slide, please. So our rendering here illustrates what the building would look like. As I said in the introductory section, we are not changing the footprint at all. There's no addition being proposed to the building. We're not increasing the height, so we're not proposing any vertical addition as well. We are proposing the roof decks, as you can see here from the Haynes Street view. However, we're going to incorporate the clear glass style panel, which reduces the amount of visual impact that may be associated with the roof decks. We were asked at the last Planning and Zoning Subcommittee meeting to incorporate a sun and shadow study. We don't think that's necessary because we're not changing anything with respect to the height of our building. I believe that was relevant if we were proposing to add an additional head house. Because we're removing the head house that currently exists in the property, we're actually improving the condition. So any impact from sun and shadow that presently exists with the building as is would actually be eliminated once that head house comes down. Next slide, please. So our zoning table shows what relief we actually require in this case. Because we are proposing an actual additional dwelling unit, there is a variance that's necessary for the additional unit. However, I would submit that the impact actually is a lesser impact based upon the number of bedrooms that we are proposing. Currently, at 8 bedrooms, you could arrange this as a rental building. We are proposing this as condos, and these would again be 2 2-bedrooms and 2 1-bedroom units. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, let me just jump back, hold on. I apologize. So just by way of other relief that's necessary, again, we're not changing anything with respect to the existing building. So most of the regulations regarding setbacks, et cetera, do not get impacted. We do require additional usable open space because the existing condition is already non-conforming. However, by proposing the roof decks, we are adding outdoor space to those 2 upper level units. Technically, that doesn't count for usable open space, but in some sub-districts it does. So there is a bit of an interpretation that is undertaken by the zoning board when looking at proposed roof decks as well. And in this case, because we're not proposing any head houses, it's pretty consistent with what the zoning board looks for in approving roof decks on buildings like this. The last item is the parking. Article 53 says that the existing conditions for parking, if there's no parking currently on the premises, that's grandfathered as we refer to it. We would call it an Article 4 protection, that there's no specific requirement to add parking to a building that doesn't have any currently. The zoning code says that when you're proposing additional units in a building, you're only required to provide parking for the additional unit that you're proposing. In this case, because we're proposing only 1 unit, we are required to only have 1 parking space. This lot would not be able to accommodate a parking space because just the way that the property is positioned. Even if it were, we were able to add a parking space on site, we would have to create a curb cut on the site. In order to do so, that would take away any potential on-street parking, assuming there was on-street parking on that section of Haynes Street. Regardless, the city does not prefer curb cuts to be added to any streetscape where you're only proposing to add 1 additional private parking space. So we're going to request a variance for that spot. Next slide, please. So this is just our site plan. We can refer back to this, any specific questions. Next slide. Showing the existing conditions, our basement plan is on the right side of your screen. We do see the first floor plan showing a total of 2 bedrooms, a dining room, kitchen, a living room. Next slide. The upper unit, second floor on the right side, shows this is a 3-bedroom, and then we show the similar floor plan layout for the 3rd floor level with the 3-bedroom. Next slide. And then the existing roof condition with the head house and the head house plan, the stairwell that brings you up to the roof currently. Next slide.
I'm sorry, well, 1 second, Richard. Could we go back a couple slides? Like, you said that this is going from 3 to 4, right?
It's a 3-unit to a 4-unit, correct?
Can we go back one more? So how, I only see 3 units. Am I missing something?
Yep, this existing condition plan.
Oh, apologies. Keep
No
going.
problem. Yeah, no, I just wanted to show that there's 8 bedrooms currently.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah, it can get confusing. I get it. So this is our elevation, existing elevation showing the front and the rear of the building. We do see the head house illustrated at the upper level. And as I said, you'll see that in the next coming slides showing you how we're removing that. Next slide, please. Again, just a different view of the sides with the head house and the orientation of the head house. Next slide. And here's our proposed condition. The left side showing the existing condition with the head house, the right side with the head house removed, and the roof deck with the, as I mentioned, the clear panels to minimize the impact. Next slide, please. So, Andrew, this is the current proposed plan. We show a basement with just mechanical and storage. We show units 1 and 2 on the first level with 1 bedroom, 1 sleeping area, consider studio size unit at the lower level. Next slide, please. In the second and third floor plan, we show units 3 and 4. These are bi-level units. So you would enter on the second floor, have an internal stairwell up to the 3rd floor. So these both show as 2-bedroom units. Next slide. And then we show the roof deck with the layouts, I'm sorry, the roof plan with the layouts of the roof deck. So each of those upper level units do have a roof deck. Next slide, please. Just the elevations, again, just showing the orientation of the building, proposed roof deck, and how it relates to the existing roof. Next slide. And again, just different views from the side. Next slide. Our process. So we did our initial meeting with P&Z on the 20th of April. We will host an abutters meeting, or ONS will host an abutters meeting at some point in the very near future. We're having our P&Z follow-up tonight, and we are anticipating, hopefully, a voting meeting before the JPNA, perhaps in June, if schedule permits. We would be before the Board of Appeals sometime this summer for the variances that we described in that zoning table. Assuming we get our approvals, we wouldn't see a permit issuance probably until the earliest, most optimistically until the fall. And construction from start to finish would take about 6 months to complete. I believe that's the last slide. Next, yep, there we go. So happy to answer any questions or address any comments.
Okay. Sorry, I had this ready to go and I've lost it. Looking for the abutters. So the abutters for this evening, excuse me, someone's trying to come into the meeting. I'm gonna find that email again. Abutters for this evening for this project who are able to speak aloud. I'm going to read all of the names off. If you're present and you'd like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand function. If you don't know how to do that, shoot me a quick message. Lauren Siegert, Jay Woodstock, Patty Diamori, Mary Grace Festa, Madeline Stasinski, and Michael Dwyer. Anybody who I've just read their names off may raise their hand or shoot me a quick message to speak aloud. Don't see anything. There was a question here in the chat. Give me 1 second. Is there any flooding that has occurred historically in the basement of this building with its close proximity to the harbor?
Good question. Not that we're aware of. The BPDA abstract slide, I don't know if we want to jump back to that, actually shows the proximity of the flood zone. We're not located in the flood zone, but we're not aware of any flooding. The upgrades that we will do to the building, obviously we're undertaking a substantial rehabilitation. If there are any issues that require us to address that, including, whether it's an installation of some pump or what have you, that'll all be done as part of the renovation as well.
Okay. And actually, we do have a raised hand now. So Jay, if you'd like to speak, I've unmuted you. Oh, actually, I didn't. There you go.
Okay. Hi, this presentation is certainly different from the first one that you submitted last month, which I am glad to see because those head houses were just incredible. But I'm still concerned about the noise that generally comes with a roof deck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Woodstock. Yes, we heard your comments at the last meeting. I talked to Francesco, and I know that there was a specific concern about shadow. Certainly with the proposed additional head house, not much we could do, or we didn't think there was much we could do with the existing head house except remove it. We went back, had the architect review it, and was able to incorporate the hatch concept that does allow us to eliminate the head house. So we wanted to try to respond to that. I understand your comments and concerns about the roof deck and what impacts it may have. I do want to point out, and I don't want to bring up sore subjects, but Mr. Kirigati owns the lot to the right of this. There's been a proposed project to build a 3-unit building there. That's going to be his home. I can assure you that he probably will share in that sentiment and concern over noise and other issues. When this is converted to a condo, I wouldn't be surprised, knowing, certainly how we prepare condo docs for this client, that there will be some very strict rules, as well as covenants, because he is an abutting neighbor as well, that he can enforce as a direct abutter. So I want to assure you that that's not something that we see a lot with projects that are being proposed with roof decks, where we have the person who is the owner that will be residing immediately next door. So that is something that I did bring up to Francesco directly, and he's allowed me to indicate that that will be a very strict rule that will be incorporated into these condo docs.
All right, well,
Great.
I appreciate it.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay. Sorry, I apologize.
Appreciate that sentiment.
Okay, and the next person to speak, Mike Dwyer.
Yeah, hi, thank you. What Jay said, she did, but besides noise, there's an issue of privacy here. These roof decks look right into our bedroom window and our tenants' windows. It's an issue of privacy, not just noise. And, to spiel this thing about covenants and stuff, that's unenforceable. That's a developer's promise to try and get this thing passed. I don't trust any kind of covenants. Once those things are sold, those people can do whatever they want. So, they do, the owner lives next door, but none of their living space faces that building. That building faces the waterfront. It's kind of walled off from the rest of the neighborhood. So, that I just feel that that's nonsense. That's one thing, those roof decks. Also, I mean, the renovation is good, but you're turning it into 4 units, and then the neighborhood loses a parking space. It's just typical. We had the Good Neighbor Act to get 64 Haynes Street built. The ZBA came up with a hardship a variance for that. And we can see now, I mean, these are just developers, and the main thing is money here. I oppose the roof decks. I oppose the rezoning to 4 units. Otherwise, great, renovate it. I mean, the building doesn't look bad. It looks kind of the same, but that other stuff, really. And I say that, kind of in futility, because the CBA is just going to do whatever they want to do anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. If I can respond to Mr. Dwyer, and thank you for that comment. I do appreciate. So one of the things you did raise, and it is a good point, and certainly something that I think is a fair criticism when developers do say, they'll incorporate a covenant. What I'm referring to is, there's a difference between a covenant that gets put in condo docs, an enforceable covenant that runs with the land that, Mr. Carragati will be able to enforce himself. As an owner of the property immediately next door, the covenant would run in his favor, not necessarily just to the condo association. So there is a bit of a distinction with a difference here. And I think that's an important feature to point out. So, if there's specific rules, Mr. Dwyer and Ms. Woodstock, that you would like to discuss, I know Francesco is certainly willing to listen to those. I mean, he's going to be your neighbor, so I don't think that's not something he's unwilling to listen to. As to the issue with changing the occupancy, again, I do understand that's always a concern, and I think one of the things that is important to understand here is that it's an old building, not unlike many of the older buildings in and around the community, that requires a good amount of investment for renovations, rehabilitations. I'll be fully transparent. Yes, it's always, real estate is a business. It is about money. Nobody goes into real estate to lose money. However, in order for a project to be viable, there's a certain level of return that has to occur. And in this case, I think the architect and Mr. Carragati have come up with a very good use of the space without the typical what we see often. And I say this only because I do enough of these projects. Rather than increasing the height of the building, for example, proposing living space in the basement level, they're really just using the space that they have in the interior of the building and just reprogramming it for a use that is generally consistent. And the fact that there are 8 bedrooms now that will be reduced to 6 bedrooms, I mean, that's a density issue that is a reduction. And I understand your point about parking. I get it, and that's always going to be a concern on any type of project. But if you have a rental project with 8 bedrooms in it, and then you look at having potentially 8 roommates with all with cars versus smaller starting families perhaps, or smaller households, those are things that certainly would be taken into consideration. We're looking at the type of program that we're proposing here. So I understand the points. I understand the concern about the privacy. We are in an urban area here for this particular site, and proposing roof decks are not, those aren't things that are necessarily even against the zoning code. The zoning code permits roof decks as a matter of right in most of the districts in and around the city. So I just want to make sure I respond to that.
Yeah, of course, you want to make sure you get the last word, although this is a community meeting and it always turns into Richard Lynn's hour. Listen, I don't know to what end you expect, why?
Michael, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. That everyone, abutters have a right to speak here, and when someone asks a question or makes a statement, the person who's representing the project has the right to respond.
Okay.
And certainly there are times that we've cut people off when they've been taking over the meeting too much, and there are times when we have cut the person who's representing the group off when we felt that they are going on too long as well. However, comments that are disrespectful to other people are not helpful in terms of being productive and coming to a place where both the community and the developer feel that they are gaining something. So I'd ask you to.
Okay, well, I have a question then. What does he hope to gain by rebutting everything that I just said? Who's he trying to convince?
He's working on behalf of his client. That's his job.
Okay.
And it's our job as the community to evaluate the project, to ask questions, and to make it clear, like when he's going into a vote at the monthly meeting, what the abutters who are the most impacted by this project are going to say to the community in terms of how they evaluate it and whether or not they would support it or not.
It sounds to me like he's trying to convince me to change my mind. Or
of course he is.
Who's the audience for that, for the spiel he just gave? It doesn't, in the end, it doesn't matter. Because
of course he's trying to get you to change his mind. He's representing the developer.
Can I finish, please? It doesn't matter in the end because the ZBA is just going to approve it anyway, no matter what I say.
So I would say that the JPNA works very hard to come to a consensus with developers, and the JPNA has a track record, a strong track record, and we can actually pull the numbers to show you that when we come to the ZBA and we tell them that a project has not been approved, we can and have had multiple projects shot down because we work so hard to come to a point that we have a consensus and are able to have a vote on a project that is positive 80% of the time.
80% of the time.
80% of the time, we're able to come to a consensus with a developer and have a developer pass with a majority of votes in a monthly meeting. And that 20%, I will tell you, when I talk to city councilors at large, when we talk to our city councilor, when we talk to the mayor, we are very clear that we expect them to stand behind us and stand behind this community group and to not pass at the ZBA that 20% that did not pass us. There are plenty of neighborhood organizations across East Boston that say no to everything. And so you can't really tell what the community wants to pass and what the community doesn't want to pass. With us, 80% does pass.
Were you at
That
the
means that
64 Haynes Street
20%,
hearing?
we expect them to stand behind us and not let that get built.
Or you were at the 64 Haynes Street hearing?
I am not,
That vote was tied, and there was quite a lot of opposition to that. The vote was tied, there was quite a lot of opposition to it, and yet it got passed with a, in my mind, made up exemption because it's a hardship lot. It's not a hardship lot. It's a hardship lot if you want to build, however many square feet they use, without any open space. Now, I forget it. I don't want to get into a discussion about the ZBA. This is getting off track.
it is getting off track. And I actually was, I do wish to be respectful of your opinions, and you are a community member and your opinion is important. However, this is 62 Haynes Street, and that is where we need to focus our attention this evening.
Well, it's the same owner, and I'm sorry that I can't divorce the fact that this is the same developer who just got approved for the very many variances which are going to change the character of this neighborhood. You can't deny that. They go together.
I wasn't planning on denying it. I've been involved in this for a long time, and I can tell you that there are moments that are very frustrating, and I do share that there are moments that are very difficult and very frustrating, and there are also moments that I would say positive, and that we can say that we do have a positive effect and create good development and a better situation for all residents. So I understand, especially when, it's on a street that you live on and it's something that you're going to have to live with, that it's a very emotional issue. So I do understand that.
It's emotional, and it's a question of justice to the abutters. And it's not just me, but, Yuli, who's not here, but who made the comment that, we were treated kind of like fools the last time. And so, they might get the benefit of the doubt for another project, but the way that they kind of steamrolled the abutters on the last project, they've created a lot of ill will. And unfortunately, yes, they are. I mean, I don't, it's just they're bad neighbors.
Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I am glad that you're expressing it.
It's not just me either. I'm sorry, it's not just me.
That's fine. That is totally fine. Part of the reasons we have these meetings is so that we can go into having a deeper discussion about the development, that unfortunately we don't have the time to do at the monthly meeting. So, I mean, you have every right to express your frustration. Like I don't object to that in any way. But I do need to encourage that we have a fruitful conversation all the way around. Did you have any other questions? Because I want to make sure it is getting close to 7:30. So I just want to make sure that if there are any other abutters and that there are any other questions, I do want to make sure that we address them.
Well, this is the only thing on the agenda, right? So if you cut it short, if you cut it off now, it's just a short.
I'm not cutting it off, but I do want to make sure that we have, I don't want us to go a full hour, but I'm not cutting us off. I just want to make sure I'm checking in kind of with Andrew and with other people.
I wouldn't want to take away from anybody else's time for speaking. I hope somebody else will speak up about it.
Well, that's why I'm checking to find out.
It's just Jay and I who are opposing this. We're the only ones who bother to come to these meetings and make a statement.
I don't feel like that's true. There are many people who come to meetings that have opinions. It's not just you and Jay.
Well,
and you guys have opinion on this specific project. Excuse me, let me speak now. Excuse me, Mike, let me speak now. I am an abutter within the 300-foot radius of this project as well. And I appreciate the fact that they are not increasing the size of the building. I'm taking the positive side of this.
Yeah, okay.
And that
I
they're
can
not
agree with
increasing
that.
the
Yeah,
size,
yes.
and that they've tried to work with you and the other abutters in removing the head house. There are many roof decks within this neighborhood. I rarely hear any complaints from people about roof decks. And
If
you know
it was
what? You live in the
really
city,
bedroom window,
unfortunately,
they
might need to install some
Michael,
blinds.
we talk. Please let Andrew finish.
You live in the city, you may unfortunately need to install some blinds, you know, if you're concerned about privacy from your neighbors. But unfortunately, that's life in the city. So I'm just putting my opinion out there. This is my own personal opinion. I have a neighbor who is putting a roof deck on his property right here in my building. I have no issue with it whatsoever.
Yeah, because it's on top of your building, not looking into your bedroom window.
It actually is. It actually is. I'm looking at it right now. So if I'm not trying to argue with you here, it's just I think that we need to wrap this up. You've made your point, and I think there are other valid points as well, and we need to move on.
You know, I hope that I'll get the same consideration when I develop my property.
Absolutely. If you own property, you have a right to change that property within the zoning code with having zero comment from anyone.
Within
if
the
you
zoning
do that-
code, no. Yeah, I'll be requesting variances for height and
And
lot
that's what I was
size
going to
and
say. It's when you
open
request the
space and-
variances, you would be in front of this community.
and
So
I-
yes,
I
if
hope
that's what you choose to
that,
do, absolutely, we would.
get the same deference that these other developers are getting. Despite
Let
what-
me assure you, Michael, our process has been put together over a period of years and is actually, it is involved enough that it involves a flow chart and a list of rules. And you can actually access those if you wish to see them at the jeffreyspoint.org website. And if you ever chose to develop your property, like we would put you through that process the same as we do every other project.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. It's a sarcastic statement. I may very
No, I
well-
understood it. I chose it
I
not
may
to.
very
interpret
well
that.
develop the property someday, but that statement is sarcasm.
No, I understand that. I chose to treat it differently. But anyway, I do want to make sure, Jay, did you have any other questions? Is there anyone else? And a butter, are there any submitted through the chat? Any abutters here who would like to comment on anything? I do want to make sure, Michael has had a chance to speak, but I do want to make sure that if there's anyone else who wishes to say anything or has questions, that we do address them.
There are just a couple other comments in the chat. Sorry, there was just one. One person is mentioning that 2 small units are an insult to affordable housing. That's that person's opinion.
Okay.
I have to agree with that statement.
Can I,
Okay.
may I respond to that just briefly? Actually, they from an affordability standpoint, we find that those are consider what you sell units for a square foot number. They're actually priced a lot differently than when you're looking at a larger unit. Some people don't need that much space, and the inventory of 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units out in the neighborhood is probably pretty high. There aren't a lot of smaller units that are available right now, and so therefore providing that opportunity actually does create an affordable option. It's not affordable subsidized or affordable deed restricted, but it's certainly a more affordable place to live than a larger unit, which is typical for some of these larger projects.
Could I just point out another thing? They might be more affordable, but also it creates a bigger profit for the developer. And I think that that's the major motivation. It's not about affordable housing here, it's to maximize the profit on that property. That's just.
Yeah, and Mr. Dwyer, I think you certainly have, your entitlement to your opinion, but I said earlier, in the interest of transparency, there's no secret here. People don't get into real estate to lose money. Anybody who owns real estate doesn't do it to buy a place to lose money. They do it to increase their investment. And in this particular case, it's not just buying it, it's buying it, renovating it, upgrading it, making it more modern for purposes of habitability. And there's investment that happens there, and investment doesn't happen without risk. And risk doesn't happen without reward. So yes, there is profit, no doubt, but that's part of the real estate business.
Okay,
And, improving a property that's been, probably on that site for, I don't know, 80 plus years, certainly could use some upgrades. That costs money, and people just don't do it just to lose, on their investment. They do it to improve their investment.
okay, you missed my point though. That's fine. Everything you said is true. Just don't try and sell it as affordable housing.
I didn't. I didn't at
No one
all.
has stated that at all.
Yeah.
And I do have to
Use
say,
that as
I
an argument
do have to say, as a realtor in the neighborhood, it focuses mostly on East Boston. The neighborhood has a glut of 2-bed, 2 baths in this neighborhood. What we are missing are 1-beds, studios, and 3-beds. And so I appreciate the fact that they are adding 1-beds, because most developers don't do that.
Andrew,
So, and I understand your point, and you're absolutely right. And no one has denied the point that this is to make money. And of course, he is trying to make it so that he's able to make money on the property without expanding the property. And I appreciate that fact.
okay, but it just comes across as you're trying to get a neighborhood approval by using the term affordable housing. You use
They have never stated that. You are the
Yes,
one who said
yes,
that.
they did. They used that in the presentation. They used the term.
So
affordable.
I
And
think,
can I-
Michael,
Can I ask Andrew can I ask Andrew a question, please? You're concerned about parking in the neighborhood, yet you have no concern about, losing losing a parking space, giving them a variance for the extra unit. Why are you regularly supporting this when generally you're very, very concerned about the parking situation here? Yet, when this comes before the board, it's not a problem, and it is a problem. It's taking away a parking space from the neighbors.
Okay, that's your opinion, because I have listened to what Richard has said during his presentation, and I agree with what he's saying. I don't always agree with him, but I do agree in this particular instance that they're lowering the density of this building. They're lowering the number of bedrooms. So there is a very large possibility that there will actually be less parking necessary because of what they're doing.
I'm sorry.
And it's perfectly right. It's perfectly fine for you to disagree with me, but that's the reason why I support this project.
Okay.
Now, if we're talking about something else that's huge and adding 30 units to something that has no units right now, and then trying to stick 10 parking spots in there, yeah, I have a problem with that. So that is why I feel the way I feel.
Okay,
So that answers your question. But I seriously agree with Margaret. We need to move on. We've allowed you to make your opinions and speak, and unless you have something that's different, like you like to point out right now, we need to move on.
Well, I'll just say this one thing. You said you reiterated what he used as a selling point, and it's just another developer's promise about how it would be worse with the roommate situation if they did, and this is going to cut down because there'll be less roommates and stuff. That's all hypothetical.
Everything is hypothetical in this instance. Everything is.
From
no one has a time machine to be able
No.
to tell you who exactly is going to buy the units.
I
and what
know
the
it, so you
results
can't use that as an argument to sell the point. You don't know what's going to happen.
But
No,
it is,
you-
I'm
all we
saying
know
it's
is
more. I'm
that we're
saying
losing a
it's
parking
more
space.
likely. It's
Yeah,
more likely.
we know, Mr. Dwyer, in theory, we do know that people buying condominiums that require off-street parking will look for condominiums with off-street parking. If that's a requirement for your purchase, that's something that you'll be a little bit more, you'll exercise more discretion on what's in your market universe. People who rent units typically rent because of availability. If they need a place to live and need to live in a certain neighborhood, then yeah, they're going to rent. And parking generally isn't the most important issue when renting an apartment. It's nice if they have it. It's nice if that's an option, but that's not always readily available. So somebody buying a condo that says I need 2 off-street parking spaces, this doesn't come with that. This limits the, certainly the universe of people that are likely to be looking at units like this. But to the point, I don't want to overstate it, going from 8 bedrooms in a rental building to 6 bedrooms in a condo, 2 of those units being 1-bedroom units, you can certainly do the math and figure out what type of household you'd be looking at compared to whether or not these were rental units, and what type of households are likely to have, I mean, how many cars are likely to have in a household? I can't say for certain that not everybody will have a car. I can't say for certain, nobody will have a car, but the type of program that you have in a building when condo versus rental certainly has an impact. That's not hypothetical, that's actual.
And I'd actually like to point out that what we've seen as a trend in the neighborhood is that the more expensive housing is, it is purchased by people at a higher income, and those people are more likely to have cars. So having 1-bedroom units that are at a lower price point, that's probably what we would consider a starter home, even 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's now like a starter condo for someone who's single. And if it's a stretch for them to purchase that, they're more likely to get rid of a car because you're within walking distance of a T station.
Yeah, sure, maybe.
So actually, I did see this happen at the end of Sumner Street. There were 2 buildings that went up that were condos, and they were considered luxury. And it went from having tons of overflow parking at the end of Sumner Street to being no parking at the end of Sumner Street.
So
Because everybody in those
anecdotally,
units had 2
proves the
cars.
point.
But where you build units that are more affordable, people don't have cars because they can't afford to have a car and an expensive unit. But anyway, it is 7:43 p.m. I do want to check in with Andrew one more time and see if any other additional questions have come in, any other additional statements, anything we should cover.
No.
At this time, are there any other abutters who had their names read aloud, who would like to make a statement, ask a question, or anything along those lines? Okay, in that case, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. The next monthly meeting of the Jeffreys Point Neighborhood Association will be in June, and I am embarrassed to say I have to check when that is. It is going to be on June 13th. It will be on Zoom. Everyone is welcome to join in. In the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please contact the board at board@jeffreyspoint.org. A reminder that nominations for board seats are still open at this time. There will be an election with voting after the June monthly meeting on June 13th. Nominations are open. You can mail them into board@jeffreyspoint.org, and they will be open until candidates are asked to speak to the organization during the June meeting. So if you or anyone you know is interested in being a board member, please contact any board member that you are comfortable or email the board directly. And we are happy to connect and speak with you and have you on the ballot. Thank you. Again, the copy of this recording is available at www.jeffreyspoint.org on our website, and that website also contains previous meeting minutes, the presentation you saw here this evening, as well as the flow chart that I referenced as a part of our planning and zoning process, which is welcome to be reviewed by anyone at any time. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Go Red Sox.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we can turn off the recording.
Oh,
And if you're part of the planning and zoning committee, please stay behind.
Yes.